Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something straight up. This world we live in, it's noisy, it's divided, and everybody's got something to say. We've drawn lines between countries, races, religions, and even between neighbors. But here's the truth. Those borders we keep fighting over, they only exist on maps. The heart doesn't see a flag. The soul doesn't speak in one language. Humanity, that's the real connection we all share. Now listen, I know people love to complicate life, but it's simple. We all want the same things. To love, to be loved, to feel safe, to live with purpose. When you strip away the labels, the titles, the skin tones, and the bank accounts, you're left with just one thing, a human being. Borders exist only on maps, not in the human heart. This idea is more than just a poetic phrase. It is a deep truth about the way humanity is meant to live. Think about it for a moment. When you meet someone for the very first time, you don't see the lines that divide countries. You don't see the documents that say where someone was born. You don't hear the invisible walls people try to put up between cultures and traditions. What you really see is another person, someone who laughs, someone who cries, someone who carries dreams and fears just like you do. Maps have power because they shape the way nations organize themselves, but they should never shape the way we look at one another. A line drawn on paper doesn't define who deserves kindness, who is worthy of respect, or who should be treated with dignity. Yet far too often humanity lets those lines turn into barriers in the mind. People begin to believe that us and them are permanent categories. But the truth is, when you sit across the table from a stranger, share a meal, and hear their story, those borders melt away. Suddenly, you realize that the person in front of you loves their children just as much as you do. They want peace and opportunity just like you. They dream of a future where life is better, just like you. The human heart was never designed to carry division. It beats the same rhythm in every chest, no matter the color of the skin, the language on the tongue, or the traditions of the home. The pulse of life is universal. Babies born in different corners of the world all come into this life the same way, crying for love, warmth, and safety. None of them enter the world asking for a passport or claiming a nationality. Humanity starts pure, without walls, without lines, without borders. It is only as we grow older that society begins teaching separation. But if borders were natural to the heart, then acts of compassion would not cross them so easily. Yet every time disaster strikes, a flood, an earthquake, a war, people rush to help no matter where it happens. Volunteers from thousands of miles away step forward to give food, water, and shelter to strangers they have never met. Why? Because at the deepest level, we know pain is universal, and so is love. We know that in moments of suffering, humanity doesn't check passports. Humanity acts. When we cling too tightly to borders, we shrink our world. We begin to believe that our responsibility ends at the edge of our street, our town, or our nation. But the heart knows better. It tells us that our responsibility is bigger than that. It whispers that the stranger across the sea is not so different from the neighbor across the fence. The heart has no borders because love cannot be contained by a line. Yes, we may speak different languages, but kindness doesn't need translation. Yes, we may live under different flags, but compassion doesn't pledge allegiance to only one. Yes, we may practice different faiths, but hope is the same prayer whispered in every corner of the earth. Borders may exist on maps, but in the heart, there is only space. Space to connect, space to forgive, space to belong. The challenge is to start living as though those lines are nothing more than what they truly are. Ink on paper. If we dare to see people instead of countries, souls instead of stereotypes, we will discover a truth that can heal this divided world. Humanity was never meant to be separated. We were meant to walk together side by side, not as nations or tribes, but as one family. And the moment we start living like that, borders will no longer matter. All humans share the same core desires. It doesn't matter if you live in a crowded city or a quiet village, if you were born into wealth or struggle, if you speak English, Arabic, Chinese, or Swahili. Deep down, the things we long for are the same. We all want to love and be loved. We all want to feel safe when we close our eyes at night. We all want to believe that our lives matter, that our existence has meaning, and that the world will remember us for more than just our name on a piece of paper. These are the desires written into the human heart, the ones that cut across every culture, every religion, every border. Take love, for example. From the moment a child is born, the first instinct is to reach out for connection. A baby doesn't understand money or power or race, but they understand the warmth of a parent's touch. That need never goes away, even as we grow older. A person may hide it behind ambition or pride, but every single one of us wants to love someone and to be loved in return. That's why songs, stories, and poems about love have been passed down for centuries, because love is a universal language and nobody is immune to its call. Then there is safety. No matter where you're from, you want a place where you can rest, where you can feel protected. It could be a home made of bricks or one built from wood and tin. The material doesn't matter as much as the feeling. When someone feels safe, they thrive. When they don't, fear eats away at their spirit. And that's why wars, violence, and oppression wound us so deeply, not just physically, but emotionally, because they rob people of something every human being deserves, the right to feel secure. Purpose is another desire that unites us all. Look at the way people chase after careers, art, family, or faith. Deep down, everyone wants to wake up in the morning believing that what they do matters. It doesn't always have to be world-changing. Sometimes purpose is found in raising a child, helping a neighbor, or creating something beautiful. Purpose is that quiet voice that tells us your life has meaning. You are not just existing, you are living. Without it, even wealth and fame feel empty. Respect is another part of this shared longing. People everywhere want to be valued. No one wants to feel invisible or dismissed because of where they come from or what they look like. Respect is one of the simplest gifts we can give one another, yet it is often withheld because of ignorance or pride. But when someone treats you with respect, it lights a fire inside. It reminds you that your presence matters. It tells you that you belong. And then there is joy. Humans were created to seek happiness. We chase it in laughter, in music, in food, in the company of friends. No matter how much pain life brings, people everywhere still find ways to smile. A child running through the rain, a grandmother cooking for her family, friends sitting together under the stars. All of these are moments that prove happiness isn't found in things, but in the connections and experiences we share. What makes these desires so powerful is that they are not bound by culture or time. Ancient civilizations wanted the same things we want today. Future generations will still long for love, safety, purpose, respect, and joy. These desires are timeless because they are stitched into the fabric of what it means to be human. We realize that our core desires are the same. It becomes harder to judge others, harder to hate, harder to separate us from them. Suddenly, the stranger on the other side of the world feels a little closer. Their struggles look familiar. Their dreams sound like our own. And that recognition that we are all chasing the same things is the beginning of unity. Because when we stop focusing on what divides us and start focusing on what unites us, we uncover the truth that has always been there. Humanity is one, and at our core, we are far more alike than we are different. Unity is built on respect, not agreement. That simple truth is often forgotten in a world where differences seem louder than similarities. Too many people believe that unity means everyone has to think the same, believe the same, vote the same, or worship the same. But if that were the case, unity would be impossible because human beings are far too diverse for perfect agreement. The beauty of humanity is that we see the world through different lenses, shaped by our upbringing, culture, and experiences. What truly brings us together is not uniformity of thought, but the ability to respect one another even when we don't see eye to eye. Respect is the foundation that allows differences to exist without turning into division. Think about a family. In a household, not everyone agrees on every subject. Children disagree with parents, siblings argue, and spouses have different opinions. Yet when respect is present, disagreements don't destroy the family. Respect creates space for listening, understanding, and compromise. Without respect, even small differences grow into walls that separate hearts. But with respect, even large differences can be managed with love. Agreement may make relationships smooth, but respect is what makes them strong. When you respect someone, you don't have to share their perspective to value their humanity. You don't have to adopt their beliefs to honor their right to hold them. Respect says, I see you, I hear you, and even though I may not agree with you, I still believe you deserve dignity. That simple shift changes the atmosphere. It turns debates into conversations, arguments into learning moments, and divides into bridges. Imagine a world where people respected each other despite their disagreements. Politics would not be filled with hate. Instead, it would be a discussion about solutions. Religion would not create wars. Instead, it would encourage people to live out their faith while honoring the faith of others. Communities would not fall apart over differences. Instead, they would grow stronger because diversity brings new perspectives. Respect doesn't erase disagreement, but it keeps disagreement from becoming destruction. The truth is, respect requires humility. It means admitting that you don't know everything, that your way isn't the only way. It means choosing to listen when it would be easier to shut down or shout back. Respect is not weakness, it is strength, because it shows you value people more than pride. Agreement is easy when you share the same background, but respect is tested when you stand face to face with someone completely different. Passing that test is what builds real unity. Respect also creates safety. When people feel respected, they open up. They are willing to share their ideas, their fears, and their dreams. They know they won't be mocked or dismissed. In that environment, trust grows, and with trust comes collaboration. That is how teams succeed, how communities heal, and how nations thrive. Unity built on agreement is fragile. It breaks the moment differences appear, but unity built on respect is unshakable because it allows room for differences to exist without tearing people apart. Look at history, and you'll see that some of the greatest movements for peace and justice were not about forcing everyone to think the same. They were about demanding respect, respect for human rights, respect for dignity, respect for life. Agreement didn't always come quickly, but respect opened the door for progress. At the end of the day, we don't need a world where everyone thinks alike. We need a world where people treat one another with honor, even when they disagree. That is where unity is born. It's not in the echo of identical voices, but in the harmony of different voices learning to coexist. And when respect becomes the standard, unity becomes unbreakable. Not because we agree on everything, but because we agree that everyone matters. Change starts with individuals. It's easy to point fingers at governments, leaders, or entire systems and say they should do better. It's easy to wait for someone powerful to step forward and fix the world's problems, but history has proven again and again that great change is not born in boardrooms or palaces first. It begins in the hearts of ordinary people who choose to act differently. Every movement that shaped humanity started with individuals who refused to accept things the way they were. When we say change starts with individuals, it means you don't need to wait for permission to make a difference. The smallest decision you make today has the power to ripple outward in ways you may never see. Holding the door open for someone, standing up against a cruel joke, offering encouragement to a struggling friend. These are not small acts. They are sparks. And enough sparks over time can start a fire. Think about how kindness works. One person decides to be generous. They inspire another person to do the same. That chain reaction grows, and before long, an entire community begins to shift. The person who chooses to act kindly didn't set out to change the world. They just made a choice in the moment. But change, real change, doesn't come from grand speeches or massive revolutions alone. It comes from consistent actions by individuals who live their values every single day. Change starting with individuals also means accountability. It forces us to stop blaming others and to ask, what am I doing to contribute to the world I want to see? If we say we want peace, do we live peacefully in our homes? If we say we want honesty, are we truthful even in the small things? If we say we want fairness, do we treat people fairly even when no one is watching? Change is not a demand we make of the world. It is a commitment we make to ourselves. It can feel overwhelming when we look at the problems around us: poverty, injustice, division, hatred. One person cannot solve all of that. But one person can make an impact on the space around them. A teacher who invests in one child changes a life. A neighbor who helps a struggling family changes a story. A student who decides to speak up against bullying changes a culture. These individual actions may not make headlines, but they create ripples that reach further than we imagine. Change also requires courage. It is often easier to go with the flow, to stay silent, to convince ourselves that our efforts won't matter. But every major step forward in humanity came because someone was brave enough to act alone. One voice said, "This is not right." One person refused to give in to fear. And once that first step was taken, others followed. Change does not ask us to be perfect. It asks us to be willing. The most powerful thing about change beginning with individuals is that it makes the impossible possible. You don't need to fix the whole world. You only need to start where you are. Be kinder than necessary. Be braver than comfortable. Be more generous than expected. These choices may seem small in isolation, but together they shift the course of families, communities, and nations. At the end of the day, the world doesn't change because we hope for it or because we complain about it. The world changes because individuals take responsibility for their part and act. You are one of those individuals. Every decision you make is either keeping the world the same or nudging it towards something better. And when enough individuals choose the better path, humanity moves forward. That's why real change doesn't start out there. It starts with you, with me, with us. It starts with individuals. Life is too short for hate and division. It's a truth most of us understand deep down, yet too often we forget it while caught up in grudges, conflicts, and opinions that don't really matter. Time is the most precious thing we have, and no one is promised tomorrow. Every second we spend hating someone, holding on to anger, or building walls between ourselves and others is a second we'll never get back. And when we look back on our lives, we rarely regret the love we gave, but we almost always regret the love we withheld. Hate is heavy. It takes energy to stay angry, to keep replaying the wrong someone did to us, or to keep seeing people as enemies. And the more we hold on to it, the more it shapes us. It hardens our hearts, clouds our judgment, and steals our peace. Meanwhile, the person we're angry at often moves on with their life while we're still carrying the weight. Choosing hate might feel powerful in the moment, but over time it drains us. It makes life smaller and darker. Choosing love, forgiveness, or even just letting go, on the other hand, sets us free. Division is just as destructive. When we build walls between ourselves and others based on race, religion, politics, or any difference, we limit our world. We cut ourselves off from relationships, opportunities, and lessons that could enrich our lives. Division convinces us that people who are different are threats rather than potential friends. It convinces us that we are safer behind barriers when, in reality, we are lonelier. Life is too short to live inside an echo chamber, surrounded only by people who think, act, or look like us. The truth is, our time on this planet is fleeting. Days turn into weeks, weeks into years, and before we know it, life has passed by. When that final day comes, the grudges, arguments, and divisions that once felt so important will mean nothing. What will matter is the love we shared, the kindness we showed, and the bridges we built. People don't lie on their deathbeds wishing they had hated more or held on to anger longer. They wish they had forgiven sooner, loved deeper, and spent more time connecting than dividing. Choosing to let go of hate doesn't mean we excuse wrongdoing. It doesn't mean we forget pain. It means we choose not to let that pain control us. It means we decide that peace is more valuable than pride. Forgiveness is not a gift to the person who hurt us. It's a gift we give ourselves. It's the decision to stop reliving the past and to start building a future that isn't defined by bitterness. Likewise, rejecting division doesn't mean we erase differences. It means we embrace them without letting them separate us. It means we focus more on what we share than what sets us apart. And when we do that, we discover that our common humanity is far greater than any disagreement. We learn from one another, grow together, and find strength in unity. Life is too short to waste on hate and too precious to spend building walls. We have limited time, and every moment we choose to love, forgive, and connect adds beauty to that time. It makes life fuller, richer, and more meaningful. So why spend a single heartbeat on hatred when we could use it to heal? Why waste a single breath on division when we could use it to bring people together? The clock is ticking for all of us, and none of us know when it will stop. That's why the most powerful choice we can make is to love while we can. Forgive while we have the chance, and reach across every divide before time runs out. See people, not labels. It sounds simple, but it is one of the hardest lessons for humanity to practice. From the moment we are born, society starts teaching us categories: rich or poor, male or female, educated or uneducated, native or foreigner, this religion or that religion. We grow up surrounded by labels that claim to define people before we even get to know them. But the truth is, no label can capture the depth of a human soul. Labels may describe one part of someone's identity, but they should never be mistaken for the whole story. When we focus on labels, we reduce people to stereotypes. When we choose to see people instead, we honor their humanity. Labels are shortcuts the mind uses to sort the world, but shortcuts often lead to misunderstanding. If you meet someone and the first thing you see is their skin color, their job, or the neighborhood they come from, you might already assume things about them without ever hearing their voice. You may place them in a box they never chose. And once we put people in boxes, it becomes easy to treat them as less than human. That is how prejudice, discrimination, and division are born. Not from seeing people, but from clinging to labels. But when you strip away labels, something powerful happens. You start noticing the person underneath. You hear their laughter, their pain, their dreams, their fears. You begin to realize that the things that matter most are not defined by categories. Everyone wants love. Everyone struggles with fear. Everyone hopes for tomorrow to be a little brighter than today. These experiences don't belong to one label. They belong to all of us. Seeing people instead of labels reveals the common thread of humanity that connects us all. Consider what happens when we choose to see people first. Conversations become deeper. Relationships become more authentic. Conflicts lose some of their sharpness because we stop fighting against them and start listening to him or her. Labels divide, but stories unite. And you can only hear someone's story if you are willing to look past the label attached to them and recognize the full human being standing in front of you. This doesn't mean we ignore differences. People do come from different cultures, backgrounds, and beliefs, and those differences are valuable. But respecting difference is not the same as reducing someone to it. To see people, not labels, is to say, I honor where you come from, but I will not let that blind me to who you are. It is the balance between acknowledging diversity and refusing to let diversity turn into division. Life becomes richer when we stop living by labels. Imagine a world where we looked at each person as a book instead of a cover. How many stories would we discover? How many friendships would we form? How much wisdom would we gain from voices we might have ignored? Too many times we miss opportunities for connection because a label told us someone was different or not like us. But when we look past that, we often find people who inspire us, challenge us, and even change us. Seeing people instead of labels is a choice we make every day. It happens when we pause before judging, when we listen before assuming, when we care before categorizing. It happens when we remember that every person we meet is carrying a story we do not yet know. And once we see that story, the label fades into the background. At the end of the day, labels are paper thin. They may shape first impressions, but they should never define final decisions. A label can tell you something about a person, but it will never tell you everything. Only by seeing the person beyond the label can we truly honor their humanity. And if more of us live that way, the walls of division would fall, replaced by bridges of understanding. Because the world doesn't need more labels. It needs more people willing to see one another for who they truly are.